everything.
Oh, everything.
For instance, well, even caustic soda. I mean, usually if you got some crystalline material in the bottom of your drum, that's usually the inorganics, the phosphate or the caustic or something like that. If it's still in a syrupy, waxy state, it might be polymer. Now, sometimes you can, but you add more water and a little, maybe warming it up, stirring it up, get things to go back into solution, which is, to me, kind of important, because usually when things are falling out, they're not coming out in nice, even proportions. You know, the clear liquid on the top isn't the same as the stuff on the bottom. You may have a formula that you've got half your ingredients left, and it's...
Ask anybody who used to make Applejack on the back stoop.
So we don't want them to leave things outdoors, and we don't want to leave them on a truck. And this is one of the things we do in the wintertime. Sometimes we hold back, like on Thursday and Friday, and stop shipping for a couple of days, and ship Monday. Or if the temperature is down to 0 for a few days, we may not ship at all. We don't want to take a chance.
And that's why just rolling a drum around on the floor is generally not enough to really mix it up there.
Sometimes it's hard to see what is really going on in that drum. I mean, you can't see to the bottom of it. And if you get down to the bottom and you got a lot of crud in the bottom, that means somewhere along the line your proportions weren't right. You don't like to see that particularly.
You know, you have customers that think that because the drum froze, that they can roll it back and forth across the plant floor. That doesn't really mix anything.
Sometimes, you can get some things to go into solution. Now, this sheet I'm giving you, this is I'm into boiler water treatment. Now, these are the most of the boiler water treatment formulas. Down the left-hand side, you'll see the formula number. There's a double line horizontally across the middle. That's just sort of roughly divides the top half are hard water, and you'll see the second column is makeup. Those are hard water formulas. The lower half of the page is generally soft water formulas. Some of them kind of fit in between.
Nice.
The pressure, low pressure, high pressure, pretty general. Percent return, those are ballpark ranges that these products are normally used in. It doesn't mean they cannot be used in something else, but partly why I'm showing you this is so that I don't expect you all to have to be selecting your own product. We always thought that was our job, but in truth of the matter is, many times you probably have a good idea of what formula, and this will help you select it. Under use, CNS, that's whether it's corrosion and scale inhibitor. These are more like if you, they're not one drum formulas, but generally in boiler water we are trying to make a boiler aid product that will be both a corrosion and a deposit inhibitor. So CNS means corrosion and scale. CNS and CU standing for cleanup, and this is indicated down at the bottom. I guess I didn't put CU down at the bottom. But CU meaning cleanup. In other words, you got a scaled up situation. Quite often that means EDTA might be in there, or some scale dissolving polymer. For instance, MP503, if you go across, is just cleanup. It'll obviously do some deposit inhibiting, but it's usually used as a additive or a supplement to another type. CNS plus, that means we throw in some extra or an additional polymer in there. Most of these have at least 2 polymers in them. Sometimes they'll have 3 to 4 polymers, and that's what the plus stands for. CS and EDTA, of course, that's a chelating agent. We don't always want to have EDTA in every formula, so we don't. We don't need it, but if that's be more for cleaning up. You want to have EDTA present.
Is that severe cleaning?
Yeah, what's the
difference?
That's for cleanup, but you've got cleanup.
Okay,
maximum ED.
okay,
What's
let
the-
me say, this is a column I don't like, because all of these formulas, in effect, do scale inhibiting. All of these formulas could be construed to have some cleanup ability to them if they were used in excess, like double the normal rate. if I got EDTA down there, that product is generally meant to be used in a dirty boiler situation. If it doesn't, if it just says CU, that means I'm probably doing it with polymers or possibly phosphonate.
Mildly dirty.
Yeah, phosphonate may be in there for that.
So the EDTA is big time cleanup.
Yeah, okay. Sulfite, a lot of times people wanna know, does it have sulfite or doesn't it? In other words, do I have to use extra or not? Most of the time we do anyway, but all of those that say yes have some sulfite in them. Up there in the MP 200 to 225 range, those are low pressure steam heating system boilers. Those will all have a pretty good amount of sulfite in them. When you look at that MP 200 to 225, as you go, well, the difference in those is really, you'll notice in the percent return column. The MP 200 has more sulfite in it and less scale inhibitor because it's in a tight system. MP 210, which I consider probably the standard product for like a school boiler or a heating system boiler that's got reasonably good return, has a little more scale inhibitor, a little more alkalinity to it. MP 220 a little more because see, if you're looking at the return column, you know, it's for a system that's got less return to it. MP 225, you're getting up in a lot of alkalinity, a lot of caustic in there, a lot of scale inhibitor, and less sulfite. The proportion of sulfite goes down, the proportion of scale inhibitor goes up. Now, after that, it's a whole new ballgame. I put, because people a lot of times ask USDA and FDA whether no, yes, whether it is or it isn't. Now, that's tricky because this changes too with time. We revise these formulas, and as you know, that some of these formula numbers we've used for years, we have modified those formulas many times, and we will take that formula for which we have a standard formula sheet, and we will modify even that depending on the customer. In other words, we look at those report forms you send in, and we will shift it a little bit. Sometimes we've modified it enough that it belongs in a new number, but we didn't, sometimes we might not even do that. But we have to have a number to keep the material safety data sheet straight. We want to have our material safety data sheet reflect what we're doing also. I mean, that's just a requirement that we have to live with. The USDA, now this is the meat, poultry, and eggshell grading thing. A lot of these formulas could be USDA approved. We just haven't sent them in because we don't need another one, or we want the flexibility of changing it because it takes 3-4 months to get an approval back, even if you just modify it somewhat. Also, under USDA, there are different grades of the USDA approval. A G6 grade allows the steam from the boiler to contact edible food. A G7 doesn't. It allows you to use it in a USDA plant, but they don't want you to cook with the steam directly. There are some other things too. We try to keep most of them in the G6 category, but because, and I'll tell you what the kicker is, anything that says sulfite on it is either not going to be USDA approved or it's going to be a G7. They just don't like sulfite. Now, we have liquid oxygen remover approved. No, because it's called decharacterization. They're afraid it might be used as a food additive. They don't want anybody using it as a food additive. Sulfite is a preservative. You know, it's in,
So you sulfite.
Use it for shrimp.
fried bologna and onions, bacon.
Shrimp, seafoods of all types.
Keeps me in such good, well-preserved shape.
Okay,
Problem is
and they're
sometimes it has
afraid
some
that these
reactions to it,
food
too.
people will put it in the product. So they make you decharacterize it. They make you put something else in there with it that just, you know, like lignin. Phosphate they let you do too. I don't understand that one because that can be used in food. Most phosphates are food grade materials. for instance, if you have a USDA plant, you can't use straight oxygen remover. Our powdered oxygen remover is straight sulfite, 100%. These aren't secrets that we want the world to know, but there's no dilution of that. You can't make it stronger. Don't let anybody tell you they got a stronger product, because they can't. But if it's USDA approved, we call it oxygen remover L or oxygen remover P. There's hardly anybody we sell these kind of things to, but a meat packer we would have to. And oxygen remover L means it's got 10% lignin in it. Now it's brown. Right now, if they can't use that, we would color it or something. So it's not that it isn't safe, the sulfite isn't safe, because it is, but they don't want you somehow trying to get it into food. So that's why they limit it, and they will do that to us on some of these, up until about 5 or 6 years ago, we were getting away with it easy in 4-letter formulas. But we're just making it more difficult now. Okay, FDA, now, USDA, as you should know, approves each product formula. Schaefer, they got the book. Jerry's got a book here, I'm sure. Maybe it's an old one by now, but
By now.
you can look in there. USDA inspector goes around. Every drum of anything that looks like a chemical or a food product that comes in the plant has to be in that book by name, product name and number. Whether it's in the boiler room or whether it's in the cleaning room, I mean cleaning compounds, all that. So they approve it by product. Okay, FDA, which covers all food processing other than that, they approve generic, I won't say generic, they approve these polymers by brand name, but the individual ingredients. In other words, they won't give me a FDA approval for Schaefer XYZ. They won't give me anything at all in writing. All I have to do, is say, this product contains only ingredients that are approved by FDA for food processing or under CFR such and such, such and such. So, if it says FDA, yes, that means all the ingredients in the product are approved by FDA. And food processing plants have to use those. Now, hospitals don't have to do either. Nobody else has to do either, but they will sometimes want to. So if you can get away with it, tell them you'll get them a product that's FDA approved, because it's a lot more flexible and easier to get one of those in than it is USDA.
Hey, I see that, but
All milk plants, at least in New York State, must have FDA approved products, as well as they want to see a USDA letter. But they want the letter saying that they're approved.
The problem you get with USDA, if you tell somebody I'll get you a USDA approved product, and they say, okay, send me the letter. Now, we got probably copies in the file of the approvals.
Yeah.
Okay, you show them a letter, and it says, well, this says milk, or this says meat, poultry, etc. I want one that says hospitals. There isn't such a thing. And they get mad, or cheese making, whatever it is. There isn't such a thing. There isn't a law that requires them to do anything except have FDA approved products. Chemicals, not products.
there's two products here that kind of surprised me, because it seems from the way you described it that if you had FDA approval, then it would hence be USDA approved. But I find there's a couple of that are
a lot broader.
Or I meant the other way around, excuse me. If it was USDA approved, that it would have hence be FDA approved too. And I see there's two of them that are listed as USDA
Oh, I'll
approved. The
tell you
last
what it
two,
is.
the last one on each column, 580 and 581. Is
those
that
are
because of the blip date?
Yeah, FDA, it isn't in their book yet.
Uh-huh, okay.
But
They're just
USDA already has accepted it. Now, you're right, it's almost always the other way around. USDA is gonna be a little slower.
It's strictly
sometimes.
because of the blip date then.
And sometimes the problem is the polymers. Again, some of the newer polymers,
Let's see.
there are some good polymers that aren't on the list yet, but I still like to use them in some products, so I got them in there, and that'll be the reason it's a no for both of those things. SSMA, sulfonate styrene maleic anhydride, is a good copolymer that's been around a long time, but it isn't approved by anybody yet, so you've gotta use it in formulas that, where it doesn't matter. But you see the asterisk shows that we have
Molybdate, yes.
essentially two products with molybdate in them. We'll probably be expanding on that a little bit.
If I looked over to the other column and seen the asterisk,
Now, there's some of these
answered my
products
own
that
question.
overlap each other a lot, so, I think when you see, you know, if you ask me, it doesn't make sense to have this do this when this does that, you're right, it probably doesn't. But we've had some of these formulas a long time, and we either haven't taken them off the list, or we're just like the flexibility, not all the formulas. You notice I left the MP 500 out of there. Now, we have an MP 500, which is usually used as a supplement. It's a more of a polymer type additive that we use when we want to have two boiler aid drums on the premises. A lot of companies, a lot of our competitors do that. We try to put more things in one drum, but that gives us flexibility to use a couple extra polymers solubility-wise that we couldn't do. So MP 500 is the product name that I use for that purpose, but I have like half a dozen formulas for 500, and one of them is USDA approved. Most of them are probably FDA approved. So, but that's got to be done on a case-by-case basis. Okay? Now, this sheet I consider to be something I don't want you leaving around anywhere. Years ago, my father would turn over in his grave, I can say that now, if he thought this kind of information was floating. But more and more, it's become a necessity for the people out talking to customers to know these things and understand it better. So, you'll notice Lisa did this, we just did this a couple days ago. She put it on letterhead paper, and I told her go chop the letterhead off and print it blank, so if it is lost, maybe somebody won't understand what they're seeing. Okay?
You know whose it is.
Any questions on that? I don't expect now that you have to do all your own selecting. I still expect to see engineering reports and discuss it. But Jerry asked for this a couple of years ago, and we did do one that was a little less informative maybe than this is.
This one's much nicer.
Okay. First thing you know, Jerry's gonna like something. Okay, next thing we talked about, I told Jerry, because we were talking about it in our own sales meetings, that I wanted to mention thermal fluids, particularly Dowtherm SR1, because you're gonna run into this. It isn't gonna make you any money, but we're gonna run into it around the world, and I think you need to know enough about it, and I really do think you do, because I got customers that think this is probably the most important thing you do for them. As long as they keep buying some chemicals, that's fine, that we make money on. Okay, systems are usually closed loop recirculating systems. I'm gonna do a little pass around here.
Dowtherm SR1, you remember when we sold it at St. Joe's?
Yeah, we got it.
Yeah. Now, Dowtherm SR1 is Dow Chemicals inhibited ethylene glycol. I'm stacking some more over here. This is a general product bulletin. I had sent for another stack of this stuff. I go through it fairly fast because we sell this and give these kind of things to our customers. Most of the time they buy it elsewhere, but they want us to check it for them. They want us to do tell them, do we have enough in our system? Do we have enough inhibitor in our system? Dowtherm is ethylene glycol with a hell of a lot of inhibitors in it. It's probably 95% glycol, or maybe less, maybe 90, I don't know.
These two?
Only because I got them. Now, there's more literature than this in the world, but it's just ones I have to bring with me. The inhibitors, ethylene glycol is used for its antifreeze properties in the system, but ethylene glycol is a lot more corrosive than water is. You usually got a solution in there circulating of 30 to 50% ethylene glycol and the rest of the water. but because it's corrosive, Dow, this brand name product, has a lot of inhibitors. They have over 1,000 parts per million phosphate in there. I mean, if you test the system at 50%, so they got even more in the product. 1,000 parts per million phosphate, over 100 parts per million triazole. I'm not sure which azole it is. That was on an MBT test, I think. It has nitrite of about 1,000.
2,000.
Okay, I tested systems that had less, but in the product as is, it may be 2,000. But generally, of course, you're diluting it out. And if you look on the back of that single page sheet, down at the bottom, it'll give you the freezing points under 4.3, freezing and boiling points. Okay, freezing temperature and the percent glycol by volume. Now, most people are looking at 50% glycol, which will give you a minus 34 degrees freeze protection. A lot of people run at about 40, depending on how cold they think they're gonna have to deal with. And the interesting thing about this is, if you have a system with glycol in it, this temperature that they're showing you here, minus 34 degrees, is where it starts to slush up. The, what they call the bursting temperature, which is where it really gets cold and starts to freeze, is like, I don't know, 10, 12, whatever it is, degrees below that. So, you can play it fairly close. If you were pumping it around, it might be hard to pump when it gets real slushy, but it isn't gonna bust pipes, usually at these, so you got a little bit of leeway there. Dowtherm is dyed also with a pink fluorescent pink liquid.
I like it.
And of course, I don't know if you've all seen a refractometer that you test the liquid with. You've been to the gas station and they've had their old kinds. Well, this is Dow's. They opened up the briefcase at the airport. They wanted to look at this.
Yeah.
And then they looked at it, and one handed it to the other one, and they looked at it, and they smiled at each other. And I said, it's a refractometer, and they said, oh. They put it back in and handed it to me.
Could have been anything.
Could have been anything. Okay.
proctologist.
I'm gonna show you this in a minute here, because this is the two things that our customers want usually are, what is the freezing point? Because they put this in their system. First off, they never know how many gallons go in the system. They don't know how many they put in, they don't know how much was their volume of the system to start with. They need somebody to check the percent glycol so they know what the freeze point is, so they can have a little bit of comfort in that. Not hardly anybody can tell them that, but good water treatment companies. Okay. The other thing they want to know, they want to make sure, they don't always understand this even. You got to tell them, you got to make sure you got a lot of inhibitor in there, because this system will go fast without inhibitors. If somebody, and I've run into these kind before, where they buy ethylene glycol in drums, straight ethylene glycol, and put that in the system. That system's going to be orange overnight, and it's going from there from bad to worse. So you want to have the inhibitors that they put in, and Dow will test this also. After a few years, they deteriorate a little bit, even if it's a tight system. So we can test, and you can see the nitrite level drop off and whatever. And CSWT is a good way to add back in to give them some more inhibitor. Another question you get asked is, why can I use this in my car radiator? You cannot. Dow says this on everything. I'm not 100% sure of all the reasons, but they say that like automobile antifreeze has like silicates in it, which you don't want to have in your recirculating system. That makes a deposit you can't get off anything. And the temperatures and the wear and tear. However, sure would be nice, because Dowtherm sells for anywhere from $7 and something to $9 a gallon in a drum. It's the only way you can buy it in a 55-gallon drum. Usually if somebody says, I need 75 gallons, I say, if you go buy 2 drums and have one on the leftover, you can use as some makeup. Yeah. Now, It costs us right now $7.15 a gallon to buy it in a drum. I can't ship it here for less than $1 a gallon. You can go over here and buy it in any one of 3 or 4 places here in town. Now, in turn, anybody who's gonna buy 10 drums, every distributor in the world will fall over themselves delivering it to them. So they, you know, most of your customers are gonna buy a lot, are gonna go direct. So there's no money to be made in this. Typically with my salesmen, you know, we add $1 a gallon on, I give them 50 cents a gallon, and I take 50 cents a gallon. We're doing this as a service to our customers, going elsewhere. We have had customers that will buy a lot. We had a cooling system down in Ohio that was losing water like crazy, but they had to have it in there, and they were buying maybe a drum a month to replenish their system, because it was always low. But then the whole thing went, they lost all of their antifreeze. Incidentally, ethylene glycol is a very toxic poison, so you gotta be careful where you dump this too, but there's a hole down the drain. So and because their budget wouldn't allow, they bought like 3 drums a month till they got about 25 drums back into the system to bring it back up once they corrected the leaks. So this can be very expensive for somebody. And we were charging them even more because our Ohio salesman wanted to make more off of it. But in general, it's not, if you're gonna buy large quantities, you can get it in a tank truck usually too, like 2,000 gallons. And probably get it a little cheaper. But,
In fact, if you have a real big system, you can get Dow to come right in and size the system for you. And what they will do is they'll take a brand new system and they come in and they put 1 pound or 2 pounds of salt into the system. It's just plain water.
well, that's how you can
And
size
then,
the system.
and then they'll size the system by how much
How many chlorides are present. in
right,
all
how
those
many
elements.
chlorides are present before and after. And they'll size the system. And you drain it all out, and then they'll bring a tank truck of Dowtherm in and pump so many gallons. They'll know exactly what they want to pump in. They'll pump all that in, and then fill the system up with water. And they'll work it out to be a 60% Dowtherm or something like that.
Okay, now, there's a couple of ways you can test the system now, because really the most important thing they're concerned about is the freeze point. You know, most of the time they don't know, they're buying a small amount. Even Dow will only test your system. You can send them a sample. If you bought 250 gallons or more, they will once a year test your system for you. And we got so many requests for testing systems that, we've had people buy their own ethylene glycol, which you can get a hell of a lot cheaper than $8 a gallon, and buy CSWT, you know, and that's still probably not as good as, I know it's not as good as the inhibitors that are in alpha to start with. Now, what I wanted to show you was there's 2 ways to check the quantity of glycol in the system. And one is using a hydrometer, which is similar to what you would do in an old service station where they had you squeeze it up and float that's really a specific gravity test. Now, it's a little more accurate to use a hydrometer. Let me see this hydrometer.
I'll probably want it.
Is this brand new or?
It's the way I buy condom packages, extra large box. Oops, excuse me. But this is a
I got a
hydrometer.
bigger one than
Yeah. Okay.
Dream on.
Okay.
You wanna graduate someday?
You got one?
Sure.
100 milliliters? This might float in a 50, but I don't know if I got enough liquid.
Yeah, probably.
I brought that in those little bottles because
That'll
it's
float
got
in the 50
plastic
because I
bottles.
got the next size bigger and I use a 100
It was
milliliter
probably over
graduate for
50
mine.
bucks. This, okay,